Okay, in this video I'm going to try to explain how I set up one of these 90-gram CO2 tanks, an empty one to take air. I drilled and tapped a hole here for a Schrader valve. The one I've got on my 357 caliber is a $20 valve, not this one, but it has to hold that pressure. It's a 3,000 psi Schrader valve, and like I said, it cost me 20 bucks. This is just one that I bought to hold less pressure. This video is just to give you an example of how I set this up. Now, in my 357 rifle, I cut off the end of the tank where the hole was punched in. Cut that off. Okay, and then that makes a bigger entry hole into here, into the tank, and I tapped that with the 1/8 inch pipe threads. That'd be like this guy right here, 1/8 inch national pipe threads. Tap that right into the end of this tank to make threads on the inside. Okay, so that I could screw something into it, something with threads, like this thing's got threads. This will screw into it. What I used now on my 357 is I used a valve from a Crossman pistol. It was an old Medalist, so it was a brass valve. What I did was I cut off the end of the valve. Here's the end of the valve. There was an O-ring in here, rubber O-ring, and this little hole right here is where the pump pumped air in, and then on the inside, that's where there was a little valve close-off little deal that would with the spring would let air in and then close against the hole to keep air from going back out. So I cut the end of the valve. The whole thing unscrews apart in the center and then screws back together, and there's a spring, and then there's the valve parts inside. So I cut the end of that off, and then I could tap the end of it. So let's just say this is this is a different kind of a valve, but let's say this came out of a pistol, a Crossman pistol. So you got your brass there. I cut the end of that off and then tapped a hole just like I did, tapped and put threads on the inside of where I cut this off of the back of the valve where the air goes in. So I basically got a nipple then that goes 1/8 inch national pipe threads threaded into this, so the nipple threads into there and screws in. I had to also put threads on the valve so I could screw the Crossman valve on there. Now it'd still come apart in the center, but it also screwed into the end of this. I used JB Weld on both those threaded joints. Okay, so then basically, then on the end of the valve is where you got your fire pin deal that pushes, you push and it releases the air out. But this, like I said, this is a different setup. But basically, I'm telling you what I had to do to get that valve attached to a tank was drill and tap. I didn't have to drill. I had to cut off the end of the tank here and tap that hole, 1/8 inch pipe threads. Did the same after I cut the end of this off of the Crossman valve, 1/8 inch, and then pipe threads, and then took like a nipple, but I wouldn't get black pipe. I wouldn't get a 1/8 inch black pipe deal because to me they look too thin and they've got a seam on the inside. Now this is something different. This has got a nut on the end of it. This is from some kind of a contraption goes together for a gas line or whatever. But this is thicker metal, and it doesn't have a seam. So if I cut the end of that off, that could screw into the end of the tank and into the valve, Crossman valve. But also now on that Schrader valve, I was telling you about, you need a special tap. You need to get the rated for 3,000 psi to get air into this. You gotta, it's for like shocks and things like that. Motorcycle place where I bought the Schrader valve for 3,000 psi. But then this is the same exact threads as the outside of that valve, or like this valve, one of these rubber valves. This is the same thread. So anyway, to make one of these tanks work to put for high pressure air, drill and tap a hole here so that'll take that $20 Schrader valve that'll hold 3,000 psi, unless you want to do something like I'm doing here. I'm only, this here setup I'm using, I can shoot airsoft or an arrow, airsoft plastic BBs, you know, the 6mm BBs. Pump that up to about 100 pounds, and then when I push this valve, it shoots out the BB. Anyway, I just wanted to explain how I got the empty CO2 tank married together, screwed on to the Crossman brass valve. I don't know, most of them now are made out of aluminum, but this was an old metallist and it had the brass. You could probably still order brass valves somewhere for Crossman pistols, but that's permanently attached then. When I threaded it in here and threaded it into the Crossman valve, let's just say this is a Crossman valve, so it's screwed in. So on this end it'd be where the fire pin release is, and your air comes out to your barrel. Over and out.